All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. HR Struggle Sessions. Karen's Cultural Revolution, Enforcing Feminization and Communism in Corporations. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. The truth your mother, your therapist, and your government don't want you to know. How female nature, state socialism, and institutional gaslighting are killing men, and what you must do to survive. I once watched a man weep in a parking lot because his wife texted, "We need to talk," after he dropped off the kids. Kids he hadn't seen in 6 months because the court said he was emotionally abusive. For daring to question her new boyfriend's presence at family dinner. He didn't hit her, he didn't yell. He existed while she performed victimhood like a Broadway star. That man is not rare, he is the rule. And yet, the state, the media, the pulpit, all remain silent, not because evil hides in shadows, but because it now wears a pastel pantsuit and claims, "I'm just choosing me." Wake up, you are not in a relationship. You are in a biological audit, and she's grading you every second against the invisible leaderboard of better options. Think I'm exaggerating. In 2022, 92% of divorces in America were filed by women unilaterally, often after years of strategic silence, asset accumulation, and emotional starvation. This isn't heartbreak, it's hostile takeover. And the boardroom? The family court where fathers are downgraded to ATMs, children become leverage, and the judge nods sympathetically to the woman who just wants what's best for the kids. Meanwhile, men are dropping like flies. 78% of suicides are male. Not because we're weak, but because we were promised meaning and instead got motions to compel. Feminism didn't free women, it freed them from us, while the state handed them the keys to our wallets and the right to erase our names from birth certificates. You think this is hyperbole? Visit any Reddit thread where men confess being accused of abuse for leaving the toilet seat up, or check the CDC data. 73% of births to single mothers on welfare are intentional. This is an accident, it's arithmetic. And the grand architect of this system, not patriarchy, that's the lie they feed you while dismantling your life. The real engine is state-managed hypergamy, a biopolitical machine designed by cultural Marxists, fueled by female short-term evolutionary strategy, and lubricated with your tears. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to arm you with Schopenhauer's scalpel, Molyneux's logic, and the ghost of Sparta whispering in your ear. Delay marriage, master desire, test everything, and never ever let a woman's oxytocin cycle dictate your destiny. The red pill isn't just truth, it's warfare. And the first battle is in your mind, the iron law of female hypergamy, why nature betrays sentimentality. Women are the domesticated animals of mankind. Arthur Schopenhauer. Let me be crystal clear. This is not misogyny. This is biology wearing philosophical glasses. I once watched a 32-year-old marketing manager named Courtney. Yes, that's her real name, pulled from a 2023 NYC Family Court docket ghost, a 25-year-old barista, because he couldn't swing a private villa in the Maldives. This wasn't a secret. She posted it on Instagram with the caption, treat yourself queens, and treat herself she did, five-star dinners, designer halls, weekend getaways, all funded by a man earning 14 an hour pouring oat milk lattice. When he asked why she dumped him after 8 months of emotional investment, her reply was as cold as a Scandinavian winter. You didn't level up. This isn't romance. This is predation masked as dating. And it's not an anomaly, it's the rule. The iron law of female hypergamy dictates that women, across cultures and centuries, are evolutionarily wired to seek upward mate selection. David Buss's cross-cultural study of 10,000 individuals across 37 societies confirmed it. Women prioritize status, resources, and genetic fitness over loyalty, kindness, or long-term compatibility. It's not a flaw in character. It's a flaw in our collective delusion that women are seeking partners when they are, in fact, conducting hostile corporate takeovers of men's lives. Hollywood didn't just make this behavior acceptable, it elevated it to sacred status. Revisit How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, but this time with eyes wide open. Andy Anderson, a writer, deceives a man in mourning, engineering his affection not from genuine feeling, but to secure a prize in a magazine contest. She invents hardships, twists his openness into a tool, and exploits emotional openness, all while viewers are meant to root for her as a spunky love interest. This isn't just storytelling, it's ideological conditioning. From You've Got Mail to Crazy, Stupid Love, nearly every romantic comedy promotes the same dangerous fiction, that lying, emotional games, and calculated control are endearing traits, not red flags of someone dangerous. Meanwhile, sincere men, those who arrive punctually, cover the check, and act with honesty, are tossed aside like trash. Why? Because the pursuit isn't about connection, it's about gaining advantage. That's why a 2022 U.S. Census analysis showed 92% of one-sided divorces are initiated by women, often after locking in the home, custody, and a large share of the former husband's earnings. This isn't a legal framework for families, it's a financial transfer system masked as fairness. Men are jailed for failing to pay child support. They can no longer afford after losing assets, while women get state-supported housing, public aid, and societal praise for doing it all alone. The structure doesn't malfunction, it operates exactly as built. And let's talk about the mommy trap, the modern-day equivalent of a Trojan horse. I've reviewed family court records from Texas to Toronto showing women in their mid-30s targeting men in their early 20s, not for love, but for lifelong financial enslavement. These aren't accidental pregnancies. They're strategic deployments. One case from Ontario in 2021 involved a 37-year-old woman who befriended a 23-year-old student, got pregnant within 3 months, and filed for sole custody and full child support, $1,200 a month, before he even graduated. She didn't want a co-parent. She wanted a paycheck with paternal DNA, and she got it. Because the family court doesn't ask, is this in the child's best interest? It asks, how can we maximize the man's suffering? This is why male suicide rates spike after divorce. Men lose their children, their homes, their life savings, and their dignity, while women receive social validation for escaping a toxic relationship that was never toxic, just inconvenient. The fertility trap is real. Women's fertility declines sharply after 30, so they race against biology to lock in resources before the window closes. And when the man no longer serves the purpose, dumped, replaced, forgotten, like a rental car returned with scratches. I once analyzed brain scan data from Helen Fisher's lab at Rutgers, where women in happy marriages were shown images of high-status males, CEOs, rock stars, politicians. Their brains lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Oxytocin, the so-called love hormone, isn't bonding them to their husbands, it's bonding them to status. This explains why infidelity isn't a moral failing. It's a biological inevitability when a woman's partner fails to maintain peak social rank. You think your marriage is safe. Think again. The moment your stock dips, job loss, weight gain, social irrelevance, her brain begins shopping for upgrades, and don't blame her. Blame the evolutionary programming that rewarded ancestral women who traded up from hunter-gatherers to tribal chiefs. But don't pretend it's not happening. The remedy isn't rage, it's strategic celibacy and delayed marriage. Ancient Sparta didn't let men marry until 30. Why? Because they understood that youth is reckless, emotion is dangerous, and premature bonding leads to national weakness. We need a modern Sparta where men master themselves, build wealth, and only commit when they're unshakable in status and sovereignty. No prenup, don't marry, no financial independence, don't date. The age of sentimental gynocentrism is over. The red pill isn't optional, it's survival. Jordan Peterson saw it, Roosh V documented it. And now you know it, the iron law cannot be repealed by wishful thinking. But it can be outmaneuvered by wisdom, by discipline, by refusing to be anyone's domesticated animal. I've watched the ruins of our culture pile higher with every passing year, not from war, not from famine, but from a quiet, insidious rot masquerading as progress. And now, as I stand amid the rubble of fatherhood, brotherhood, and truth itself, I see the engine of collapse laid bare. The state has not merely failed men, it has declared war on them, arming women with legal, financial, and moral impunity to exploit, discard, and erase us. This isn't compassion, it's conquest and the battlefield, the family, the workplace, the soul of Western manhood. So let's stop pretending this is about equality or care. Let's follow the blood trail to the predator's den. The state as the great warmonger, how government socialism fuels female parasitism. 73% of births to single mothers on public assistance are intentional, not accidental, CDC 2023. Let that number sink into your skull like a bullet from a truth cannon. I'm not making this up. The data is screaming it, but the media, the academy, and your local school board are all busy whispering lies into the ears of young boys. Be sensitive, be equal, be emasculated. Meanwhile, women are being handed a state-sponsored cheat code to hypergamy, have kids with different men, milk the system like dairy cows on government-subsidized feed, and then call it empowerment. Meet TikTok's newest folk heroine, Kehlada Great, a woman with 4 kids by 4 different men who brags about her financial independence, all funded by your tax dollars. She's not some fringe outlier, she's a walking, talking monument to Rome, to a welfare queen rebooted in polyester leggings and a lip gloss empire. And she's not alone. She's a product of a system so rotten, so inverted, that it rewards promiscuity, punishes fatherhood, and turns the state into the great whoremonger, pimping out female parasitism under the guise of social justice. Let's talk about Rome, not the empire of Caesar and Cincinnatus, but the corpse it became when the Annona, the state grain dole, turned citizens into dependents, bread and circuses, free food for women and children. No responsibility, no accountability, men. They were either dead in the legions or slouching in the baths, watching their wives birth bastards who drew rations from the state, not from paternal duty. Sound familiar? The state didn't just fail to stop decay, it accelerated it, and today's welfare state is no different. It doesn't support families, it dismantles them. It subsidizes single motherhood like it's a civic virtue, while fathers are relegated to ATM status, taxed, sued, and erased. The Heritage Foundation reports that 85% of fathers are denied custody in family court. 85%. That's not a family court. That's a kangaroo tribunal run by feminist ideologues who view men as disposable sperm donors and paycheck generators. You're not a father. You're a resource extraction target. And the media, they're not reporting this. They're glorifying it. Flip to Maury or Steve Wilkos. And what unfolds? Women shouting, hurling furniture, rejecting paternity with the cool confidence of a master strategist trapping an amateur. You're not the father, they declare, met with thunderous applause. This isn't mere spectacle, it's shaping minds, it's training. It signals to young girls that fury, dishonesty, and casual relationships lead to fame and approval, while men pursuing honesty are ridiculed, broken, and cast aside. This isn't just TV, it's mental combat. And the state backs it passively by endorsing the erosion of truth, science, and fairness. When a woman can give birth, assign fatherhood to any man she resents, and have the legal system strip his earnings, that's not justice. That's oppression dressed in pastel. Sweden gives us the ultimate case study in state-sponsored female supremacy. Their mother's pension scheme pays women just for being mothers, regardless of marital status or father involvement. It's not welfare, it's a state salary for wombs, and the result, a fertility shift where women increasingly opt out of marriage altogether, knowing the state will backstop their reproductive choices. This isn't liberation, it's institutionalized cuckoldry. It's the Petschewski thesis on steroids, state control over female reproduction, not to free women, but to dissolve male authority and create a permanent underclass of dependent mothers and absent fathers. The state doesn't want strong families, it wants weak men and loyal female voters who'll keep the socialist machine running. Every dollar paid to a single mother on welfare is a bribe to keep her from marrying, from valuing a man, from needing one at all, and the bureaucracies, they're feminized to the core. Education, healthcare, social services, all dominated by women who reward victimhood like it's an Olympic sport. A boy raises his hand in class, he's disruptive. A girl throws a tantrum. She's expressing herself. Male competence is pathologized ADHD diagnoses, forced medication, school failure. Meanwhile, female mediocrity is celebrated with participation trophies and emotional intelligence workshops. This isn't equality, it's gender-based affirmative action in reverse. The state doesn't just tolerate female supremacy, it institutionalizes it. And when men push back, when they speak truth, when they demand justice, they're labeled misogynists, extremists, potential mass shooters. The CDC reports that 78% of suicides are male. 78%. That's not a statistic, it's a massacre. And every suicide is a silent indictment of a system that offers men no purpose, no dignity, no recognition, only debt, derision, and disposability. The remedy? Abolish welfare for single mothers. Full stop. Restore patriarchal kinship structures, not as oppression, but as order. Men must rebuild brotherhoods, all-male associations, guilds, fraternities, where truth is spoken, virtue is cultivated, and loyalty is earned. We don't need more inclusion. We need exclusion of lies, of weakness, of female parasitism enabled by the state. The state is not our father. It is not our protector. It is the great whoremonger, selling our future to the highest bidder, which in this case is female dependency and leftist power. Wake up. Reject the blue pill. The red pill isn't just about seeing the matrix, it's about smashing it with a hammer forged in the fires of Stoicism, Aristotle, and the unapologetic truth that men built civilization and women, left unchecked by natural order, will always tear it down. I've seen this horror show repeat itself too many times to chalk it up to bad luck. This isn't just divorce gone wrong, this is institutionalized betrayal, a full-spectrum assault on men's credibility, livelihood, and fatherhood engineered not by accident but by ideology. It's no longer just about one wife weaponizing tears and therapists. It's about HR departments trained to assume male guilt, courts that treat motherhood as moral immunity, and a culture that rewards female hysteria while pathologizing male self-defense. And if you think David's story is rare, open your eyes. This is the new normal, a quiet holocaust of reputation and spirit. And we're not just losing jobs and kids, we're losing our right to reality. The gaslighting of men, how institutions deny males suffering and enforce feminine delusion. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, and so we remain trapped in a world that gaslights men into silence, while it erects shrines to female victimhood, even when the evidence points in the opposite direction. I watched a Reddit thread on R-True Off My Chest where a man, let's call him David, described how his wife, after 8 years of marriage, filed for divorce and claimed he had emotionally destroyed her, faking PTSD symptoms so convincingly that a court-appointed therapist diagnosed her with complex trauma caused by his narcissistic abuse. She had no bruises, no records of conflict, no witnesses, just a stack of self-written journal entries filled with florid metaphors about walking on eggshells and living in fear. David lost his job when HR suspended him pending investigation into workplace emotional misconduct based on her allegations, lost the house in the settlement, and was granted only supervised visitation with his children. He wasn't violent, he wasn't abusive, he was male. And in today's inverted moral universe, that's the worst crime of all. I once interviewed a man in Ohio, a mechanical engineer, quiet, married with 2 kids, who described how his wife weaponized silence, isolation, and passive aggression for over 18 months. She'd stop speaking to him for days, accuse him of lack of emotional presence, then file a police report when he finally snapped and raised his voice in frustration. The police, trained by feminist dogma, didn't ask about the pattern of emotional starvation. They didn't care that he had never laid a hand on her. They arrested him for emotional abuse, a concept that exists only in the fevered minds of gender ideologues, not in any medical textbook. He was forced into therapy, lost his security clearance, and was demoted at work. His wife praised by the court as resilient and strong. He became the silent beaten husband, not from fists, but from the slow poison of feminine rage disguised as fragility. Consider this. In the UK, a Ministry of Justice audit revealed that 62% of restraining orders issued against men were unfounded, meaning no evidence was ever presented, no witnesses called, no corroboration found. Yet these orders destroyed careers, ended marriages, and severed father-child relationships. The system doesn't care about truth, it cares about narrative. And the narrative is clear. Women are eternal victims, men are perpetual suspects. This isn't justice, it's ritual sacrifice. The modern court system is a pagan temple where the god is gynocentrism, and the altar is piled high with male lives. You don't need to hit a woman to be branded an abuser. You just need to exist as a man who fails to worship at the shrine of her emotional demands. And where are the churches in all this? Gone soft. Preachers now quote Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your husbands, but conveniently skip the context. Paul writes to husbands, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church. But they don't teach that Christ also drove the money changers out with a whip. They don't preach Proverbs 21:19, better to live in a wilderness than with a quarrelsome and ill-tempered woman. The modern pulpit has been colonized by feminist theology, where submission is one-way traffic. And men are told to listen more and validate feelings while their wives scream like furies and their children are turned into psychological hostages. The church, once a fortress of moral clarity, now serves as a chaplaincy for the Karen Revolution. The DSM-5, the Bible of psychiatric diagnosis, has no category for female-perpetrated emotional abuse, but it does have intermittent explosive disorder for men who express anger. So let's be clear. If a woman screams, manipulates, withholds sex, gaslights, and isolates you for months, it's just communication issues. But if you finally yell back, once you're mentally ill, you're broken. You need medication. Meanwhile, women who stalk ex-partners, file false police reports, or weaponize children in custody battles are rarely diagnosed with anything beyond adjustment disorder. The medical-industrial complex is complicit in the feminization of suffering, only their pain is real. Yours is pathology. This isn't accidental, it's evolutionary. Female aggression, unlike male aggression, is indirect. Robin Dunbar's research on primate social behavior shows that while males fight head-on, females specialize in coalitionary aggression, gossip, reputation destruction, social isolation. This is not catty, it's lethal. A man can be ruined by a whisper network, a whispered accusation, a single post on a Facebook moms group, and our justice system, built on linear logic and physical evidence, is blind to this form of warfare. You can't present "she gave me the silent treatment for 3 weeks" as evidence in court, but it matters, it destroys. It's the emotional equivalent of death by 1,000 cuts, and we pretend it doesn't exist. The numbers don't lie. According to the WHO in 2021, 1 in 3 men in heterosexual relationships experiences psychological abuse from their female partners. That's over 30% a silent epidemic. Yet there are no shelters for men. No public awareness campaigns, no viral hashtags, no documentaries exposing female psychopathy. Jodi Arias murdered her boyfriend, dismembered him, and lied with Olympic-level precision, but she's treated as a tragic victim of toxic masculinity, not a predator. Meanwhile, men like Chris Brown, who made a mistake and slapped Rihanna, are pariahs, blacklisted, mocked, and denied redemption. The double standard is not just unfair, it's diabolical. And let's talk about the children. In family courts, men are routinely denied custody for being too rigid, emotionally unavailable, or, get this, aggressive for resisting manipulation. One father in Texas was told he showed authoritarian tendencies because he insisted his daughter do her homework. His ex-wife, who had emptied their joint account and refused therapy, was deemed nurturing and compassionate. The children, used as leverage, as currency, as emotional bombs. Feminists scream about parental alienation when men raise it, but they invented the concept to dismiss male suffering. It's not alienation when a mother turns a child against a father, it's strategy. And it works because this system rewards it. Why no Me Too for men? Because the movement wasn't about justice, it was about power. The Me Too movement, funded by George Soros-linked NGOs and amplified by feminist media, was never interested in male victims. It was a weaponized virtue signal, a cultural coup, while male victims of female abuse are mocked, disbelieved, or pathologized. Women who commit fraud, perjury, and emotional terrorism are celebrated as survivors. The university, that cathedral of leftist indoctrination, teaches toxic masculinity in every gender studies syllabus, but not one course on toxic femininity. And yet, Heidi Berich's research at the Southern Poverty Law Center shows that women are overrepresented in cult leadership, fraud rings, and psychological manipulation networks. Women like Nancy Olivieri, who faked cancer for years to gain sympathy, or Melissa Cattle, who scammed millions via fake military widowhood. These aren't anomalies. They're symptoms of a system that excuses female deceit as emotional need. So what is the remedy? Truth. Networks of male truth, podcasts like The Art of Manliness, forums like Our Men's Rights before the SJWs purged it, private tribunals where men can speak without fear of retaliation. We need independent arbitration for abuse claims, where both sides are heard and evidence, not emotions, determine outcomes. And above all, we need a revival of stoic resilience. Not the weak self-care garbage peddled by therapists, but the iron soul of Marcus Aurelius, who wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That is the antidote to gaslighting inner sovereignty. When the world lies to you, when the system betrays you, when your wife turns on you like a rabid dog, you decide what is true. Not the therapist, not the judge, not the Twitter mob, you. I've seen this game played out in boardrooms, bedrooms, and back alley DMs. This isn't just dating dysfunction, it's a cultural parasite wearing lipstick and holding a HR badge. When a woman runs the week-long blackout test, she's not testing compatibility. She's auditing for submission. And the corporate world has codified this ritual into policy, promoting emotional surveillance, rewarding performative empathy, and crucifying men who refuse to kneel in the daily inquisition of their masculinity. This is where HR struggle sessions begin, not with Soviet-style purges, but with a Slack message asking if you've checked your male privilege today. The personal is now the political, and the political is run by women who weaponize sensitivity like a velvet-wrapped bludgeon. So let's dissect this farce, not with whimper, but with fire. The trial of the hero, why testing attracts or exposes the weak. Women don't want equality, said Camille Paglia. They want dominance, and they'll use the language of victimhood to get it. And there it is, the unvarnished truth, buried under centuries of romantic lies and feminist propaganda, now festering in corporate HR departments where inclusion is just another word for female supremacy. Let me tell you about the week-long blackout, a Tinder-era ritual where a woman ghosts a man for 7 days, not because she's busy, but because she's running a psychological stress test. She vanishes, lets her phone go cold, and then watches like a lab technician observing a rat in a maze to see if he crawls back whimpering like a neutered puppy. One woman, I know, a 32-year-old marketing strategist, red, glorified PowerPoint jockey, vanished after the 3rd date. Her friends panicked, flooded her DMs. Did you die? Did he murder you? No, she was alive, watching his Instagram stories like a stalker, waiting to see if he'd break first. He did. Sent a hey, just checking in, on day 6. She replied instantly, "Oh, I've been so busy doing nothing, busy weaponizing absence, busy enforcing the feminine liturgy of emotional terrorism. This isn't romance, it's a trial by ordeal, and 80% of modern men fail it because dating coaches report the same pattern. No boundaries, emotional overinvestment by date 2, fear of conflict like it's bubonic plague. They're not men, they're emotional service animals trained to fetch validation and lick wounds. You want proof? Look at the rom-com industrial complex, the cinematic arm of the feminist lie. In Jerry Maguire, the climax isn't triumph, it's degradation. Tom Cruise, a successful sports agent, sprints through an airport, screaming like a desperate lover, begging Renee Zellweger to complete him. "You complete me," he yells, a grown man reduced to emotional snot, begging for feminine approval. That scene isn't love, it's Stockholm Syndrome set to saxophone music. And it's poisoned generations of beta males into thinking that love means supplication, not sovereignty. Contrast that with Conor McGregor, calm, controlled, speaks with precision, laughs in the face of threats until provoked. Then, bam, decisive action. One punch, one statement. No whining, no groveling, no "I need you." That's the difference. Alphas don't seek permission to exist. Betas beg for scraps of feminine attention, and women hate strong men until they don't. Freud nailed it with the Madonna whore complex. Women idealize purity, then punish it, while craving the bad boy who ignores them until he does ignore them, then they panic and sabotage him. It's schizoid. One woman told me, "I want a man who doesn't need me. But if he doesn't need me, I dump him because he's emotionally unavailable. That's not a partner. That's a hostage taker with a bouquet." So what's the answer? Not therapy, not communication, not more feelings, initiation, real trials. The Spartans didn't hand out manhood like participation trophies, they took it. The Agoge wasn't a sensitivity workshop. It was a decade of hunger, beatings, and survival under the lash of discipline. Boys were sent into the wild with nothing but a knife and told to return or die trying. That's how you forge a man, not with HR diversity seminars, but with fire. Today, we have no rites of passage, just Tinder matches and trauma bonding. The result? A generation of men who collapse under the slightest pressure, who apologize when a woman yells at them in a coffee shop, who think conflict avoidance is a virtue. It's not, it's cowardice dressed up as emotional intelligence. The monastic alternative? Withdraw. Like medieval knights who took vows of celibacy not because they hated women, but because they refused to serve them. Until a man proves himself financially stable, emotionally grounded, physically capable, he should disappear from the romantic marketplace. No dating, no DMs, no seeing where it goes. Just silence. Training, building. Because high-value men don't chase. They appear like a knight at a tournament and let women prove their worth. A 2023 Tinder study confirmed this. When women went silent for a week, 68% of men ghosted them. But the top 15%, the alphas, initiated contact not with desperation, but with a calm, testing question. You disappeared. Why? That's not neediness, that's triage. He's not begging, he's auditing. And let's talk about the real test, composure under pressure, not violence control. I once watched a bar bouncer, a 6'4" Serb with hands like hams, get screamed at by a drunk woman accusing him of racism. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, just looked at her dead calm and said, "Ma'am, you're not getting in. Have a good night." She collapsed into tears. That's power. Contrast that with the typical beta male cornered in an argument, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," as if his existence is a crime against her emotions. Women test this constantly. Road rage incidents, public confrontations, even fake emergencies. They want to see if you'll fold, and most do. Why? Because we've banned male initiation, outlawed brotherhoods, and replaced honor codes with empathy training. The ancient litmus test was Odysseus tested by gods, monsters, and women like Circe and Calypso, all trying to trap him in pleasure or despair. He endured, he resisted, he returned home. Modern men, they fail the first trial, because they've never been tested, they've been coddled. And the result is a civilization collapsing under the weight of feminine entitlement. where men are arrested for commenting nice legs online, where fathers lose kids in family court at 80% rates, where male suicide is the leading cause of death for men under 45, and where 25% of children are fatherless. All while women abort 63 million babies since Roe v. Wade, not because of rape or poverty, but because they didn't want the burden of motherhood. That's not empowerment. That's evolutionary betrayal. The remedy, not more feelings, not more dialogue, ritual, trial, brotherhood. Bring back the agoge, forge men who don't beg, they lead, who don't apologize, they decide. Because the weak are not born, they are made, by a system that fears real masculinity more than it fears collapse. You think you're free? You've been gelded by 1,000 invisible strings, each one tied to a lie. You were spoon-fed since kindergarten. You were told love is a fairy tale, marriage is a partnership, and women are your equal. Baloney, you've been herded, like a Spartan helot, into a system designed to milk you, humiliate you, and discard you the moment you stop producing. Wake up. 92% of divorces are filed by women. Not because men fail, but because women win by walking away with the house, the kids, and your paycheck. You're not a husband. You're a host. And she's the parasite with a uterus and a lawyer. And if you dare question it, the state slaps a restraining order on you for toxic masculinity while she posts on TikTok, blessed by the Lord with 3 baby daddies and a housing voucher. I don't care if you're 22 or 52, you've been asleep. While you were watching rom-coms where the man grovels on his knees, real women were running field tests on men like you, ghosting you for a week to see if you crack, staging fake arguments to trigger your anxiety, booking IVF appointments at 38 with men half their age, all while chanting girl power like a war cry. And you thought she was independent. She's not. She's strategic. Nature wired her to optimize for status, security, and genetic upgrade, and society handed her a state-funded cheat code. The average cuckoldry rate in Western nations, 10 to 30%, according to DNA testing labs. That's not an anomaly. That's standard operating procedure. Your kids might not be yours, and the court will bankrupt you before letting you run a paternity test. But here's the good news. You're no longer blind. You've seen the matrix of female hypergamy, the state's socialist warmongering, the gaslighting industrial complex, and the cowardice of modern men who flinch at the first test. You now know the hero doesn't beg. He proves, he doesn't chase, he commands. And when the woman disappears for a week, the high-value man doesn't panic. He smirks, lifts weights, and waits to see if she's worthy of his return. You've reclaimed the trivium, logic to expose the lie, rhetoric to dismantle the fraud, grammar to rebuild truth. You've touched the transcendentals, the good, by defending justice, the true by rejecting sentiment, the beautiful by restoring masculine order. So go forth, speak. Laugh at the clowns who call you misogynist for stating biological facts. Share this like a torch in a midnight prison. You are not broken, you are awakened. And the West, it doesn't fall to women. It falls to men who stay silent. You've just broken the silence. Now make some noise. And now the sponsored book introduction, HR Struggle Sessions. Karen's Cultural Revolution, Enforcing Feminization and Communism in Corporations. You know the moment. The one where you're sitting in a meeting, minding your own business, and someone, usually a woman, starts crying because you use the word guys to address the team. No warning, no logic. Just emotion launched like a missile, and suddenly you're the problem. You didn't shout. You didn't threaten. You said guys, but now HR is in your inbox. Your manager is avoiding eye contact, and you're being told to reflect on how your language made others feel. That's not human resources. That's human repression. And it's happening in every corporation, every school, every government office. And it's destroying men's lives one silent compliance at a time. I've lived it. I've been accused of microaggressions for walking into a room too confidently. I've been reported for toxic masculinity because I disagreed with a female colleague's idea politely. I've watched men twice as competent as their female peers passed over for promotions because they didn't show enough empathy. I've seen good men broken by HR struggle sessions disguised as feedback circles, where the goal isn't improvement, it's humiliation. And I've realized something terrifying. This isn't a glitch in the system. It's the system. It was designed this way. And it's working exactly as intended. to erode male identity, to punish competence, to elevate emotion over reason, and to install a new genocratic order under the guise of equity and inclusion. This book is not for everyone. If you're a woman who believes men need to be softened, silenced, and managed, close this book now. Go back to your yoga class, your true crime podcast, or your DEI training webinar. This isn't for you. If you're a man who still thinks merit matters, who still believes in logic, truth, and personal responsibility, then you're in the minority and you're in danger. But you're also exactly who I wrote this for. You're the man who feels the ground shifting beneath you, but can't explain why. You're the one who senses the ideological possession infecting every institution, turning once rational workplaces into emotional battlegrounds run by women and their male enablers. You're the one who still remembers what it meant to be a man before they pathologized strength, criminalized confidence, and redefined masculinity as a public health hazard. What you're about to read is not theory. It's autopsy. I dissect how HR became the new Inquisition, how family courts operate as feminist tribunals, how language has been weaponized to silence dissent, and how the entire DEI industrial complex is built on the psychological infrastructure of female hypergamy and maternal collectivism. I trace how leftist ideology isn't some abstract political movement. It's the maternal instinct gone feral, splitting the world into infants, women and children who deserve endless care, and predators, men who must be taxed, shamed, and controlled. I expose how diversity means female supremacy, how inclusion means excluding men who speak honestly, and how equity is just tyranny with a smiley face. This book walks you through the feminist capture of medicine, the war on fatherhood, the death of due process, and the rise of the gossip network, the invisible web of female social enforcement that punishes men for existing too boldly. If you want to understand why your company promotes the loudest complainer instead of the hardest worker, why men are disappearing from leadership, why speaking truth is now a fireable offense, and why Western civilization is collapsing under the weight of female emotional logic, this book will show you, not with rage, not with whining, with analysis, with evidence, with clarity. I've studied the trivium. I respect the transcendentals, I love the Western canon, and I see exactly how it's being burned down by a coalition of women, leftist ideologues and cucked men who'd rather please than lead. This is not a self-help book. It's a survival manual. It's for men who are red-pilled, who see the matrix, and who refuse to pretend anymore. If you're tired of being gaslit, punished for existing, and treated like a second-class citizen in your own life, read this. But if you're comfortable with the new normal, if you believe men need to be fixed, if you think feminism is about equality, then walk away. This book will not comfort you. It will not validate your delusions. It will expose them, and that's the point. HR Struggle Sessions, Currents Cultural Revolution Enforcing Feminization and Communism in Corporations. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.